Hi everybody, welcome to our afternoon webinar. I'm Karen Smith, I'm an implementation project manager here at Lanteria, and I'm going to walk you through our subject today, which actually I jumped the screen there, is on remote teams. And in this interesting year of 2020, a lot of companies have found themselves in situations where they've had to decentralize a lot of their workers and send them to their homes, and that can oftentimes lead to a lot of changes in productivity and how people interface with one another that are typically handled while they're in person, and how to manage around some of those things is quite challenging, especially again in the human capital area. So we have a short presentation here today just to discuss some of the topics, some of what we see that might be some of the challenges, and make some recommendations on how you might be able to manage that. If you haven't done it yet, obviously, again, some of this has been going on for some time, but many people thought they might go back to the office and are finding that they're going to continue with remote working. So not only, again, just some general recommendations, but maybe how you can leverage our tool to help support that continued decentralized model. So let's talk about some things. I will tell you, I'm in Google Docs and I found this laser pointer and I'm just captivated with it. So you'll see with that little red item when it moves around, it's me pointing to things, and that's where that comes from. All right, we're going to get some of these sales promo pieces out of the way. So our company has been in business for about 13 or so years, probably coming up, going to be a little longer than that. And we have 200,000 plus users around the globe. We don't only just sell here in the US, but obviously in many countries we're present around the globe. And we have over 250 clients that are using our product today. Some use the entire product, some use certain modules, but overall, again, lots of folks that have leveraged this product in their SharePoint environments, and even those some that didn't originally have SharePoint have also added that, again, to leverage our product. We've earned, as a typical software company, we've earned a number of awards and achievements and ratings, and you can see those here are brought together not only by consulting companies, but also various software industries that also lead awards for a high performer over the years, again, of having a high stature of selling to customers and being successful with those implementations, as well as just overall reviews of our products. You'll also see on this page a number of the clients that we service, some of the brands. Again, all companies range in size. There are large to small, and everybody is, again, a viable candidate. There is not really a lot of limitations on this product for being able to manage your employees and any of the functionality for human resources within it. Again, we have 5 solutions to build out that suite. If you are not familiar with our product, it has a foundation module, what we call our core HR. This is standard documentation management of employees and the human capital folks within your environment. We also have time and attendance, which is a combined timesheet, timekeeping system in addition to absence management. A lot of folks that currently have a lot of challenges, especially around absence management. Oftentimes environments do have timekeeping or time clock solutions, but absence management often can be quite challenging. Keeping track of that information and making sure that there is a view for your employees as well as their managers at any time to be able to see what's their current balance, what are the requests that are pending, what have been approved, and so on, and then how to manage your staff across that so that coverage is not impacted is one of, again, the largest benefits of deploying that module. We also have recruiting, which leverages an external applicant portal component to, again, streamline and reduce data input for new candidates that might come into the organization. And also we have performance. Again, a couple of different varieties in our performance module. It's become quite robust in that not only can you do standardized performance reviews, but you also can do 360s. You can also kind of twist the application to handle exit interviews or other types of reviews such as projects, things that might bring diverse groups together versus in the standardized, how did you do your job this year solutions. There also is another component in there for employee feedback and kind of a spotlight performance component as well that a lot of folks I'm finding are leveraging. Instead of the more traditional annual review, they're able to go in and have regular meetings with their staff and be able to give that immediate feedback or continual feedback throughout the year. And this makes, again, for a better trust relationship between employees and managers, as well as make sure that you're just touching base with that person and you understand any of the challenges that they may be having or, again, what they want to do for a career path going forward. So lots of functionality in that particular module. And then obviously we also offer succession planning kind of linked in there so that you as an HR staff can look at, again, the employees within the organization. Is there some that are destined for other promotion paths? Are they good backfill employees? Are you training appropriately so that you do have folks in place who can grow with the organization? So that component handles that, works in hand with performance. And then we also have learning, and that is another robust component that allows you to build out a learning catalog, manage different types of learning delivery methods, and ultimately serve that to your employees and staff to continue to develop and grow them. So it's a rather mature solution. It sits on top of, as I said, the SharePoint framework. We also have a mobile app component that does handle some of the employee self-service. This allows managers to be able to do approvals of absences if they're not at their PC. So again, continues to keep things moving, even again, if they're not in actual location, which again, that's very good now for, again, the decentralized components. We do have integration with Office 365. We have part of the standard, we're a Microsoft Gold application, so we do have advanced data security and practices based upon their controls. And we also allow for a software as a service or the SaaS solution as well as on-premise. So depending again on your security needs, you may need to keep that solution in-house. But if you don't and you can have us host it or you host it yourself, we can leverage that as well. All right. So I think that the promo piece is good. And so let's get started into talking about what we consider, what might be some of the challenges when you're moving your teams to remote work. Most of us probably remember back earlier this year, it just kind of came down as an edict and everybody grabbed their computers and notebooks and files from their desks and ran back home with the intent to probably only stay there for another month or so, kind of depending on your location within the United States. And we've seen that continue on, and we've also seen that many companies have made some changes about maybe how they'll continue in the future and where that staff may continue to reside. So not so much, I would say, mistakes, but definitely challenges, things to consider. And if they weren't considered previously, again, when we went away thinking that it would just be short term, definitely things to consider now going forward. So one of the things that, again, we've seen from our clients as well as just our experience is software, kind of a software overload. It can get very messy very quickly if you're trying to recreate your office environment on your laptop or suddenly, again, in your diversity of putting everybody out in their own spaces. Recreating a lot of that is a challenge to the IT infrastructure. But also it can be in just how you work with each other. I can honestly say that I leveraged all of these tools on a regular basis because I worked remotely for some years out of my home. A lot of people weren't used to that. So not only do you have the emotional challenges, but you also have some of the tools challenges. And what we found here was it isn't even so much that you have a lot of things to choose from, but it's probably either good if at a corporate level or at least an administration level for departments is to make some selections and to make some choices about what tools everyone's going to use. So again, most people didn't know what Zoom was. Maybe they hadn't used it. Once in a while, they might have gone on a GoToMeeting or WebEx for training. And now everybody was thrown into the world of Zoom and using Zoom and trying to figure out video. And again, nearly brought our company to its knees just because suddenly they had an influx of thousands of people who were starting to use their free software at that time, and again, challenged their own remote setup and working. But in this case, for most of our clients, picking a standard tool set, and this means we are going to agree that we're going to use Zoom. Everybody's going to use Zoom. And in Zoom, we're going to agree that everybody either uses video or doesn't have the overhead for the video. Your choice there. But make some agreed kind of processes, rules, and using these tools and the tools that you pick so that there is no confusion. This is the chat tool we're going to use. Everybody's going to be on Skype, or everybody's going to use a common calendar. Everybody's going to keep their Outlook calendar up to date. All of those things now probably need to be really considered, because that's the only way a lot of folks are going to be able to work with each other, because again, they can't walk over to their desk and say, hey, are you free on Friday for a meeting? So this first misstep potentially could just be around having those agreements in place and having folks understand this is the go-to tool for that. And doesn't mean that people can't use other tools, but in working in a collaborative forum, it's best that we all agree and have kind of a standardized tool set that we use together. Second one, this again speaks to more department heads or again any management level position, but it's difficult not to want to be a micromanager, especially when you can't walk around and just kind of check in with people. That visual check goes from being in person to now you're probably going to have to set up something a little different. It's going to be a video chat, or even if it's again using a chat tool like Skype or something like that to just check in with your staff and see how things going. This is going to be more tasks for the manager to kind of again continually keep in touch without suffocating anybody, I guess, or panicking in the sense that they don't feel like they have a good handle. So using some of these practices will allow them to still have that comfort level, understand that they need to touch place with people, continue to have an open dialogue, make sure that you understand what the workload is for each folk, making sure you look at the timelines. Again, that common calendar is a good use here. Offer them trust and provide advice and feedback as well as requested. Again, some of the standard emotional content type items that most managers need to practice anyway. But I think in this remote times, it gets to be even more challenging to, again, not to constantly be overbearing in any case, but honestly still also keep status with everyone. All right. And then our other item would be work-life balance. So this is meant for all levels within the organization. Understanding, again, that calendar comes back into play, making sure everybody understands people are in or out of the office, making sure people are taking vacation. I noticed that even in this year, it's very hard to take vacation. Can't necessarily go anywhere, can't necessarily do anything, but it's still a good activity to make sure it's on your calendar and you get some time away from work. It's just changing up the activities and again, giving you a break from the stress, the pressures, and all those kinds of things, and keeping a routine in sorts. If you're just having a staycation at home, then that's what it's going to be, but you're still away and away from the phones and the texts and, any other questions, situations that might arise. So keeping those strong habits like organizing your work schedule, keeping distractions at a minimum. This is extremely hard to do. Again, here we were in a thing that we never thought we'd be in, which was a pandemic. And those are difficult distractions. You've got a lot of input, a lot of information coming in a lot of different ways. And it's hard not to get caught up in that, in addition to all the other things that are happening in our world. So maintaining that regular schedule, a lot of times people find that they can, if they don't get dressed for work and get in a car and drive somewhere, that can alter their pace and, again, how they just manage their day-to-day. So maybe they don't roll in till noon or something like that, just because, again, they don't have to go anywhere. But it's best to always keep that regular schedule. That's the same in our regular life, is that, you know, a regular sleep schedule and all those things just give our bodies a standard function and allow us to continue with that, so that we don't get things like insomnia. And again, stress doesn't play too large of a role in uprooting us. Free time for the colleagues. So again, if you're, sometimes I find myself in this mode where I'll just keep work. And a lot of times I feel like everybody else should too. And that's not necessarily the case. So we definitely have to respect free time of colleagues when they are going to shut down for the day, even if I choose not to. And again, do you need to bring non-urgent things and pummel them with emails? Probably not. A lot of things you can kind of set down and wait for the next day. Again, this is workload management, and because, again, you don't have to get in a car and go anywhere, whoops, sorry, then you don't have to think about some of those things. You just feel like you can just keep on working. And sometimes it's a good break. I think a lot of people realize that later, that they could have just gotten in the car and that's the break that they need, but without having to do that, it makes for a little bit more challenging on how to break that work day. So again, keeping that regular schedule, working with your team, collaborating as best you can. Everybody's under the same rules and circumstances, so it's not like any one person is off by themselves. So everybody knows that there's challenges, and being able to support each other, work together, that's always a helpful thing. And then during the day, I also find this one, that you have to get up and kind of switch to some activity to restore your energy. And that could be just as easy as going outside and taking a walk, or you know, listening to some music, or, you know, baking something during lunchtime, I found also would work. Again, those types of activities allow you to kind of decompress, step away for a minute, and you know, give you some relief from work, and having a good balance, making sure that you continue to do that. So I think those are kind of the intangible, helpful items. And let's try to get into now what some of the challenges that might be directly related to HR management of people and systems, and what we can do there, and what some of our solutions are, how you can use or leverage our product to do some of those things. So I've identified 4 different items here. We do have a full article over on our website at lanteria.com. You can go and you can actually see under our blog some of the details. There's a lot of different articles, but some of the more extensive details about each of the items I'm discussing here today. But I'm going to try to show you in the app itself where you can go and find some of these supporting functions. So the first one is considerations for the work environment. So again, not everybody is alone here. Everybody's kind of in the same situation now that they've been put into this work remote situation. And it is good to always put yourself in the other person's shoes. What's it like if they're not used to it? Or I found that a lot of friends who are real extroverts have had a lot of challenges with suddenly being just at home by themselves. And again, these are where those other tactics and practices come into place, where, you know, maybe you have a weekly meeting with the team and it's a video call and everybody gets to see each other, and just kind of, again, facially check in with one another. But in this case, for us inside the system, trying to make it easier for them, trying to make life more streamlined, and again, because maybe a lot of the stuff is done manually, or you're moving things around the office when you're physically there. How can you streamline their remote work once you are in just using the system? So because our foundation allows you to keep everybody organized, you know where everyone is in the organization, you can see levels and you can have views. Again, from a management perspective, looking at the employee chart, seeing who reports to who if you're trying to isolate or locate employees to help you on particular projects, or just to reach out and see that information. You can manage your teams this way. HR can manage the whole organization this way. But a couple of the items that aren't noted here, but I did note over here to the, where's my little laser pointer? Over here to the left is how to use some of the internal functionality. This is some of our more advanced functionality inside our application for approval workflows, for process workflows. If you either have already implemented our product or you're considering to do so, these allow you to automate activities that typically right now either could be a combination of emails and paper pushing, or they're all paper-based. And it just kind of depends on what your circumstances are. But I'm going to flip over here to my demo site so I can kind of show you where this is. So under Core HR, this is our home dashboard for an HR personnel. So right now I'm logged in as an HR and I have the highest permissions. But under Core HR, there's something called processes and there's something called approval requests. So again, if you have our application and you haven't delved into these areas, they're leveraged typically during implementation when we talk about them. Processes are built out to do onboarding or offboarding type processes that you are assigning tasks to internal folks, and there are certain activities that each group needs to accomplish potentially when someone's either entering the company or exiting the company. So in this case, you might build an onboarding process that when someone new is coming into the organization and you've hired them, is you're going to create a workstation for them, meaning some kind of, you're configure a laptop potentially now in the remote environment. You're going to make sure that they have a monitor, maybe security fob, any other kind of tool, cell phone that needs to be addressed or configured for them. So those tasks can be assigned as part of a HR onboarding process that they get assigned and sent off to an IT group or team or individual, depending on your organization, and that is their responsibility. They would receive emails telling them they've been assigned certain tasks and they're to complete them, and once they mark them complete, it can either move on to additional tasks within the organization, or there can be simultaneous tasks that are assigned to IT gets these tasks, finance gets these tasks, and maybe facilities gets another task. All of those can be ongoing, or again, there could be dependencies between them. So it's a pretty high functioning application use here in terms of how you can control things as they move along. You can also have teams fill in particular forms as these tasks are going on. So say the IT person configures a workstation, he needs to enter an asset number so that that can be tracked to that employee. That information can be inputted by IT and it can be carried along the process so that other folks can see it. So maybe security team needs to see it and they know that that asset now was addressed to this person. They can update their systems or just have that information available. So processes itself for just onboarding and offboarding would work the same way. You'd have tasks where you remove people from certain components within the organization. You can see that that's kind of a standard practice that would be probably used by quite a number of companies. But we've also found that we can use HR processes for other things. I have a client that has quite a number of processes, and they use them for, again, a variety of things, exit interviews. And this is just, again, thinking creatively on how you can use the standard functionality within the system. We also have another client that uses this for tracking a candidate as it goes through the process. Now you would think that you could do that within the recruiting module, and you can, but however their process was unique in that it had to have a lot of approvals, and it also had to have a lot of information carried along and decisions made. So we found that the HR processes was one of the best ways that we could do that, again, because they had a form, they filled out the form, and the form was released and shared along the whole path of the process until the last person actually signed off on saying this person can be hired. So whatever your need might be, those are some basic ones, again, with onboarding and offboarding, but potentially there could be a lot of functionality that can be achieved with HR processes. For approval requests, this works a little bit differently in the sense that this is a straight approval. We're seeking somebody to push a button and accept or reject or potentially ask for a change. Those are the three options that you get. But it's same, works very similar in terms of HR processes. There's a form that's completed. It gets sent to the first person for their approval. They accept, can move on to another person and so on. So we've seen this be used for job requisition approvals, meaning a manager wants to hire for an open position and that position hasn't been budgeted for, so they're going to build a form to request that this position be created and get approved. And then ultimately that information can go to the recruiting team or the HR team to start recruiting for that position. And you have a recorded path of what happened and who gave that approval. And this is oftentimes lost if you use either just email, maybe just a in-person type meeting, but now, again, because everyone's decentralized, you can't just walk into someone's office and say, hey, I want to start doing this. Do you give me your approval? And they say yes, and you move on. Or even if they were to sign a piece of paper, you know, not everybody would have access to the piece of paper itself. So having to automate that, again, allows for everybody to have insight into where the request is, meaning where does it stand in terms of approvals, and HR has oversight into that so they can leverage those processes to gain approvals and keep records of such approval requests. Okay. All right, let's pop back to this one. So as I noted, the setup and manage employee onboarding, automate processes so you can reduce paper or any kind of, I'll call it more archaic type processes that involved, you know, folders and file cabinets. You can manage employee records, obviously, and their working time. Again, this can be time management, the absent management components, and you can also have shared and designed job descriptions so that everyone understands, again, what their responsibilities and roles are within the organization, even when, again, you're not all together as one. The second item was employee feedback. So this gets back to the performance module that I discussed earlier. When working offline and making sure that your employees feel connected, there's feedback as needed on their projects, and having performance assessments, or again, if you choose to use the check-in feature, makes it even more critical, again, as you're in that distributed component. In the screens here, you'll see that I can set my goals. You can also see that I have a development plan. There's a variety of things that, again, you can set goals and set development plans within your performance review form and have that feed in when you want to have your manager review it, give you suggestions, you know, set some targets, set some objectives for you so that you know what you're working toward, and those become the check-in points for you. Let's look at the site. We'll take a quick peek here. So under our performance module up here at the top, we have performance reviews. So this is the previous, probably more well-known method of where you're doing annual assessments. Everybody gets a similar form, though that, again, you can do different forms depending on the type of positions within the organization, or again, can be distributed in a variety of different ways. It could be based on locations as well as the job role, level of job roles, those kinds of things. So you can build out different forms for different items. But the performance reviews themselves can be managed here, created here, and HR gets to control how those are distributed. Goals can be set up so not only from an employee's perspective, but also from the company tiered down so that everyone's working toward the similar goals and support of the organization. That employee feedback can be another interesting source of inspiration here because we do allow for comments to be made public so teams can encourage each other, and those go into an employee's record under their performance if feedback or positive information has been said about them, either in a public forum or in private. So you can actually request feedback from someone you worked with on a project, and they can provide you feedback so your manager can see what their reaction or feelings were about how you performed on that particular project. And also you can also provide feedback to someone, and like I said, you can call each other out in a public forum to say, hey, this person did a great job and it was great to work with this one. So again, another nice, somewhat social feed so that employees can see, themselves recognized or others recognized appropriately. You'll also notice there's the check-ins. So if you choose not to do the more traditional form, the check-ins work in a standard agenda format, and you're allowed to set up topics. The employee can add topics, managers can add topics, and when they choose to meet, the manager initiates what's called a check-in, and he opens up the forum, and all of the items that are currently in the check-in, are shown on the form, and they're able to discuss each one, make some comments about them. So if there's an item on there that says, I want to learn more about Visual Basic programming, then the manager can write on there that you need to take a class, and once the class is taken, they can close that item. So you can keep kind of a running history across the year of objectives and accomplishments. And you can also have other things to discuss. Say you want to go in there and talk to your boss about moving up in the organization, or you want to start a completely different career within the company and you want to pursue something completely different in a different department. What would it take or allow you to succeed or be able to do that? And again, you can have those frank discussions. You can bring those topics. So it isn't just the standard, how did I perform? It's more of a continual open dialogue. And there are a lot of companies who leverage this very successfully, we know, and that becomes really important. I've seen it used quite a bit in a number of our consulting clients, and this is because when they are managing consultants, those folks float across the organization and can fulfill different roles and different projects for their own clients, and as a result can get feedback from a lot of different people and potentially could follow different promotion paths within the organization. So having a standardized form that comes every year isn't enough. It's not timely enough to give them feedback. So if they just finished a project with a client, they can get feedback from the person that they worked with, and then they can continue to have that discussion with their manager to say, this was successful, still need some work in this area, maybe you need a class in something, negotiations or customer service or something like that to help fill in the gap that you felt on the last project. So again, rolling dialogue, and you can actually use both within, there isn't like any restrictions, so you can still have an annual review if you choose to, that's between that manager and that employee, and then you can also just have this open continued dialogue throughout the year to again continue that conversation so that no one ever feels too left out. And again, this is going to become more and more important as more folks stay in remote places. Okay, 360 feedback as well also allows for information back and understanding. So it would allow employees to understand if there's gaps in their knowledge, or again, any skills that they need more training for, or experiences. This can capture that information. as well as feedback to their manager and how they're doing maybe during the remote times. Okay. Back we go. So it becomes really imperative for remote work to set those goals and objectives and any of the KPIs for your team. If you have these, maybe you weren't stringent in the past, but now these are going to become, I think, more imperative. People have something to work toward. They have a focus, and everyone has an agreed plan for each employee, and that's, again, going to provide that structure that, again, might be typically handled if you're all in the location together. Those regular performance check-ins, again, if you haven't used that tool, if you do have our product, that definitely, I think they're going to start to see that maybe come to more of the forefront. Encouraging managers and others to share the employee feedback is always good. 360 reviews we talked about. And then you can also do the employee surveys to gain insight for improvement and changes. So the performance module is a form that gets routed about, and again, as a result, it can do other things. So if you kind of do use your imagination, you can reimagine that the performance review turns into a survey, and we just did this with another client recently where you're building out survey to ask some key questions. And you can do anything from how are we doing as an organization, how do you think we're handling you know, the COVID situation. Again, if you want to be able to solicit information back from your employees. You can also use HR processes for that as well. It just kind of depends on how down and dirty you want to get and how formalized you want the form to be. But they both leverage workflows. Performance module has a little bit more flexibility in terms of who you can send to and how you can build out the sections of the form. If you just want down and dirty questions asked, you can use HR processes, and that can be sent to every employee within the organization to get feedback and use the reporting center to collectively report back on that data. All right, lack of communication. So this one's, again, makes the managers of your organization really have to kind of step up during this remote work environment. You don't want anybody to feel disconnected, isolated. And again, many employees are experiencing this because if they've never worked remotely previously, or if it's just not their cup of tea. I had one friend say that they really missed their office and their desk. And I thought that was an interesting perspective, but some people find comfort in the fact that they're there collectively. It's like a second family to them to be in the office and see their friends and coworkers and enjoy collaborating with them again in person. So suddenly being somewhat disconnected from that, again, the manager is going to become really important for them to communicate. Again, with the first piece where we talked about tools, but also here the manager would be able to see what and where is happening within their team. So in this case, you're seeing the team absences and that component, the report to say who's in the office, who's not in the office, as well as others would be able to see that out of the office calendar. That's another tool that can be leveraged in our application. Let me pop over here so I can show you what some of those are. So if I'm an employee and I come into the application, you'll see under my company and obviously the other modules that are here are any of the ones that I can come in. So I can come in and look at the org chart if I'm looking for somebody. If I'm looking for out of office calendar, that's another item. There's that job description we talked about. So if they need some clarity as to what exactly their tasks or expectations are for their role, if that hadn't previously been described, it could be now a good time to have that. If you have the recruiting module, you'll see other job openings that are available within the organization, and that employee feedback is that social feed that allows you to provide kudos for some folks that you may have recently worked with or had on a long-term project with you. You can provide that information. This also allows again the team for communication purposes. Everybody gets to see their goals. any of the competencies or key performance indicators that they might also have can be shared between employee and manager. So again, everybody has a clear understanding of what's to be accomplished, what's the effort involved, and any other approvals, absences, timesheets, training. All of that information is now kind of a click away, rather than it potentially being in disparate systems or on paper, or just not being able to be trackable, plus being more flexible, because say you had some goals set for this year and COVID kind of dropped the bomb in the middle of them, like going to several conferences, industry conferences. A lot of those didn't happen this year. So maybe you need to change your goals, and the flexibility of being able to do that and resubmit and be, again, I just want to say flexible, but being able to be diverse and kind of move with you whenever you have to make a change, then the ability to do that through the system is there. So both employee and manager portals, you'll see that you can also switch if you have managerial responsibility. You have a manager portal to see into the same areas, employee goals and absences and performance and all the same pieces. You can also do some announcements and have some newsletter information. So we do have some new functionality that's going to allow for putting or posting information as it relates, again, to potentially HRIS situations, functionality. We've got maybe it's time for employee enrollment again. Those kinds of things can be promoted on the home pages of employees so that they can keep up to date with the news within the organization. They have access to company policies, the procedures, the documents, have that available to them as well if they need to look up something as it relates. They don't have to be in the office physically, hunting around maybe in a file cabinet. And I know a lot of people are probably saying, who still uses file cabinets? But you'd be surprised. Quite a number of our clients do start out where they're still doing paper. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just depends on, their organization and their growth. But it does make it more challenging, especially again with that decentralized workforce. Then we also have, as I noted earlier, we have our mobile application. So on the mobile app, you're able to see your employee details, documents that you have. You can also see absences. You can make requests to be absent or time away, and managers can also leverage the mobile app to approve those, and then you can see some of your training plan details there as well. And that takes us into the last one, which is employee development. So again, during COVID times, maybe what you had planned previously for training and education isn't going to work like it had thought it was or had it in past years. So remote learning certainly comes into play here. You certainly also have some challenges in, keeping people interested, and also making sure that the content is appropriate and current and maybe diverse enough as well. Setting those goals and the training activities either through the performance process or again through just a change of what you were going to study for the year becomes really important. Oops. So train and develop, again, this is showing the learning catalog of the information that each of the courses can provide, what kind of competency they may support. Is it mandatory for some folks? It might be. What area or category does it drop into? Is it like for IT? Is it just general skills? And that proper training can, again, grow an employee during the year, even during this kind of year where they can't really get out. So if you don't have a lot of training or you don't have a lot of diverse training, this might be an area where HR and IT and other managers can get together and start to fill out this catalog a little bit more and offer more opportunities. It's very easy to work with the learning catalog. Again, you can have a development plan. This development plan shows the courses that you're enrolled in. if I can wake it up here. So these are the courses, the activities that I'm actually enrolled in. There's a quiz, there's online courses. This one most likely is an in-person course, so not likely to happen, but they may move this to like a Zoom meeting or something instead. You also during these times can start to leverage a lot of knowledge that's already exists within inside your organization. So if you do have a lot of experts or expertise in-house, this is a good chance to make them trainers and hold sessions. They could be simple lunch and learns, or they could be more extensive training to train junior folks within the organization. But just to be more creative in what you can provide and the information that can be shared across folks through the learning methods. So this again would be my development plan. If I want, I can go to the catalog and search for other courses. Some folks link out to other sources like Skillsoft, or they may have LinkedIn Learning, which is one of our integrations, and they can go and pick another course and add it to their calendar. You'll see I'm in a lot of these courses already, but this one I might want to add. You'll get an add button and you'll be able to enroll in that course. And however it's delivered, whether it's a document, it's e-learning, that's all part of the setup in the background, or if it goes out to an external site, whichever might be the case. But again, having a lot of content, a lot of current and diverse content allows you to continue to develop your employees, especially again, when they're in this remote situation. Last points here, again, extensive library of either e-learning or videos, or again, if you have internal folks that can do presentations, either hire external instructors, or again, you leverage internal people. I know that I had one client that there was a big goal for them to have senior individuals train junior individuals because a lot of the senior ones were getting ready to retire, and that allowed them to have that smoother transition when that time arrived and have that solid knowledge transfer, so it didn't just go to waste and everybody had to kind of start from scratch again if that person was to leave the organization. You can also ensure that compliance training, any kind of mandatory certification continues. That can be security training, that can be independence training, any kind of finance or again corporate industry training, as well as certifications. And you just might have to think about some things a little bit differently and how you offer these items. Previously, again, if they were in person, they'll move to most likely a Zoom course, but again, what can you also do even with Zoom in terms of being able to have guest speakers or again, industry-led folks that you can bring in and have them speak to your organization for inspiration, or again, best practices for time management, work management, a lot of the things that again, people might be challenged with for remote working. All right, so those were the last items and kind of how you can leverage our application to support it. We do support essential HR application and efforts, processes, all that good stuff that just again to streamline for HR and managing the folks within the organization. Helps alleviate some of those challenges, but it also allows you to grow and automate things that maybe previously you hadn't, and allows you to have HR has more oversight versus you know, folks having to do all of the heavy lifting, and that in its own right allows and frees up time to do other things, which again allows you to keep connected well with the remote-based workplace. All right. Any questions? I'm going to check. See if I have any questions. I don't see any in my Q&A. And I don't see any in my chat. So if you have any questions, you can type them in. If you don't, again, I welcome you to go to our Lanteria site, look at our blog, look at our other webinars that are coming up that dive in a little bit more deeply into the functionality of the system. I just did some high-level screens for you. There's a lot more to get down into each of those particular components, and it might be productive to attend some of our other sessions. How much does it cost? I think that goes back to some of our sales folks. You can reach out to them, and you can contact us. You'll find that information on our website so that you can get a demo from our sales folks. you can buy it from anybody who's within our company. We'll be happy to sell it to you. Thanks for those questions, Mike. I appreciate that. All right. If there's nothing else for today, I thank you for your time. You can find me at that email address if you have any questions about anything I spoke to today. And if not, again, I encourage you to go to our homepage or company site. There you can find contacts for our sales team, and you can reach out and get more information. And like I said, they'll be happy to do demos for you so that you can see the product in all of its functionality. Thanks.